What's good, friends? This is episode 58 of the Gamecast coming at you. With the announcement of Spider-Man coming to Marvel's Avengers exclusively on PlayStation platforms, it raises that time-old question. Where should the exclusivity line be drawn when it comes to gaming? So, this week, we examine what kind of reverberations this deal could send across its forthcoming player base, and why content-gated exclusivity could potentially even hurt the players it's supposed to be helping. Plus, it's official, Halo Infinite's multiplayer is going free to play, and will even support up to 120 frames per second on the Xbox Series X. Will this be the shot in the arm that the franchise needs to be a contender in the ever-growing pool of esports titles? Also, Microsoft has begun to remove the Xbox Live and Live Gold naming from their branding. Does this mean the long-rumored removal of Xbox Live is upon us? And if so, does the inclusion of xCloud still make Game Pass Ultimate the valuable package it has been? All of this, and much more, on the newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Rigid.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz. You know what I talk about every week, wherever you get a podcast at. And follow us on Twitter at GC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. Joining me once again, my partner in crime, back in action now after a week off, Mike P-Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And as always, what have you been playing, man?
Just been living life. Had a week off, which was pretty cool. I know you've been kind of in talks and working for a long time to try to get MC Fixer on the show, so I want to say thank you to him for stepping in my stead. You guys did a great show. I enjoyed listening to it as purely as a listener, not as someone trying to critique my own work. So it was interesting being on the other side of the ropes, and I want to thank him again for coming on for the show for me. As for what I've been playing, basically, we're in a situation where adulthood has finally caught up with me in the worst of ways. So I've been driving back and forth from Virginia a few times with a moving truck and doing some crazy stuff. So basically, all I've had time to play is if I've had any free time, I've just been playing some Halo on PC. And every once in a while, I'll just mix in a little Age of Empires. And that's literally it. I haven't gotten to do basically anything that I've wanted to do gaming wise. Not that I'm super thrilled, but so super thrilled with games that have come out recently. But I mean, I wanted to buy Neo on Steam and play that, and I've wanted to play some games that have been in the backlog for a while. And hell, I've even gotten the itch recently to start speedrunning Ninja Gaiden again, and just haven't been able to get it together. So it seems like most of that real life stuff is coming to a bit of a head. Right around the time that my semester is going to start, and I'm getting 30 to 35 hours at work now. So I'm going to be working and schooling full time. So basically, as soon as I have free time to finally play games, I am again getting real lived. So we'll see what happens. But basically, for me, for the near future, Halo 3 PC. We're playing Halo 3 again. So competing in Halo 3 again on PC. So just going to be getting geared up and ready to play in some tournaments and that online. So see how that goes. But other than that, nothing too crazy. What have you been up to?
It's been kind of one thing I do want to say, obviously another shout out to MC Fixer coming through on the show last week. He fucking knocks it out of the park with everything he does. But I did love your video that you did put up, your clip, the other day of we've been playing this game for 12 years. We know where spawns are, and just
Spawn killing the kid immediately.
Yes, that was absolutely hilarious. But on my end, really, it's been in general everything's been pretty good. Not too much. We're kind of starting to do some preparing for moving as well, though nowhere near as far as you guys are moving. So kind of getting stuff packed up and whatnot. But it hasn't been as hectic because, like I said, it's relatively close where we're moving. So, But outside of that, in terms of what I've been playing, kind of been a hodgepodge of stuff. And haven't, like, played, like, intently, like, just because I've had other things, and I've also wanted to watch some movies and things like that. I started another watch through of the MCU movies the other night, so, like, I've been watching one a night, basically. So I've been kind of wanting to do that. But I did play over this past weekend, started back up Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain on PC. It's a game that, like, it's critiqued for its, and very much warranted for its story. And the Metal Gear story in general is, like, you know, you kind of throw on the tinfoil hat, you let go of all reality of what's going on, like, you kind of just, whatever, you have to believe in the world that's going on within that game to, like, enjoy it, but in terms of narrative...
You kind of have to full send your...
Right, yeah.
Your immersion, yeah.
Right, exactly. But the gameplay is what keeps me wanting to come back to that game and keeps me wanting to try to finish that game, and because it's a long game. I mean, it's like almost 50 hours to beat the campaign, and it's like you were even saying, like, granted, still working from home majority of the time, but, you know, moving, spending time with my fiance, things like that. It's like, you know, I don't have all the hours in the day to go and, you know, commit necessarily 50 hours. If it was on, you know, xCloud or something like that, yeah, that's a different story. Maybe I could, you know, fit more of the, like, kind of quick bursts in there that will get me through it. But, you know, it's still just a fun game. The gameplay is just so goddamn rewarding. It's so fun. It's so cool, the ways that you can approach situations in literally any way you could think of. So it's one of those games that's always going to be installed on my PC that I'm like, or my Xbox or whatever, that, you know, I kind of go back to and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to give it another go. But it's one of those that, like, usually and obviously people know this if they've been listening to the show now for over a year, like, I'm a story guy. I'm a narrative guy. I love narrative video games. I love things with a good story that want me to invest in that world. And, you know, the other Metal Gear games have had that. This one just doesn't, and that's okay. But besides that, I've been playing a little Halo 3 myself on PC. Absolutely fantastic. Love it. Even if I'm just playing social and, you know, some like ranked Team Slayer or something like that, you know, it's just... It's that everlasting gobstopper that's always there.
And it kind of feels like Master Chief Collection has finally gotten to a point where you feel like this is what it was supposed to be the entire time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's to me is the, you know, most telling thing about this, where it's like, you know, and we'll talk. There's more stuff that's coming that'll actually be in the show that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But it's just crazy to see where this game started, where the depths that it went to, and now it's kind of rising like this phoenix. So it's a game that I'll always, once again, one of those games, always on my hard drive, always installed, always just ready to go. And then I also too have been playing, and while I've been playing it on PS4, it is available on Steam, and I really want our PC listeners to truly give this a chance. Fall Guys. So Fall Guys is this battle royale game that is basically like, and Mike, you'll know this because you're you know, same birds of a feather like me. MXC, you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Get eliminated. It's like that, only a battle royale with these, like, bean guys. And it is, like, it's the most fun thing in the world. It's addictive because the games are quick. There's only 60 people in it, and it's round-based, so, you know, hey, the first 34 people to get from this end to the other end through all these obstacles, you qualify for the next round. And, you know, okay, this next event, there's teams of 4, and one team's going to be eliminated. The lowest score out of these teams are eliminated for whatever minigame we're playing, and the rest of the people move on. Like, it's all things like that, and then it gets down to one thing where it's like, you know, I think it's like 8 or less people or something like that for a final round. At the most, we're looking at 8 people, but, like, where it'll be like, okay, this is where we decide the winner of it. And, you know, like I said, games are quick. Like, I, you know, played, and it's the reason why I'm playing it on PS4 is just because it's launching. It launched officially yesterday, but it's been in beta for like a week or so, and a lot of content creators have been playing it, pumping it up and everything, and, you know, but it's taking the Rocket League approach where it's launching actual full launch free for PlayStation Plus users. So, you know, you could buy it on Steam, you know, whatever, but it's free for PlayStation Plus users. So that's where I jumped in. I was like, oh my god, yeah, I definitely got to get in. And it seems like, now granted, I don't know what the legs are going to be like on it and how long I'm going to play it or when I'm going to, but it's one of those games that I feel like is just going to be, if I want to just get that itch to compete, it's like my style of Battle Royale, where it's like, I want to jump into these games, just have fun, get in, get out. This is perfect for me, where it's not like, oh, maybe
Call of Duty where you camp for 30 minutes and then die to someone else who is camping, and they got the circle. Yeah,
and I actually played a couple games of Warzone now that they have the actual, solo queue that you can get into and do solo battle royales. Like, so I played a couple of games from that yesterday because the servers were down for Fall Guys because they keep adding more bandwidth to it to be able to take on the higher player counts that they're getting. So I played a couple games of Warzone because I was like, yeah, I have it installed now that I upgraded my hard drive. I don't have to uninstall things all the time. Like, yeah, fuck it. I'll jump in and try a game. Like, I'm in that mood for Battle Royale if I'm going to play this. So I played 2 games, and it took like an hour just because like I ended up being in top 20 at least in both, but some of it is sitting around waiting because the map's so big, and it's just if I'm playing Battle Royales, and that's the one thing I'll give Fortnite at least, where if you die, you're out, you're right back in the game. You're queued up instantly, you're ready to go. All you have to do is boom, right back into it. It's quick, it's instantaneous. And granted,
we know you loved your Wailing Woods.
Right, exactly. Wailing Woods, baby. Hot drop in there all the time. But it's that type of feeling that I like about Battle Royales, and like this, especially where it's like, this is fun. You could be competitive with it, like you want to win, but it's like, if you lose, you're like, son of a bitch. Like, I'm so close. Like, you're just having fun. It's very much,
Is it crossplay?
I don't believe so yet, but the big thing that people are really excited for, and where I think it's really going to blow up, is eventually, I believe they are doing custom games and like private games. So like,
oh, that's awesome.
So when streamers and things like that want to say, okay, viewers, put this code in, you can join my game. First 60 people or whatever, we're doing this. And
that's awesome.
Viewer games or sub games or whatever. So that's where I think it's really going to blow up, and it's already starting to. I mean, it's had great numbers on Steam and whatnot, and so I don't know, man. I'm really excited to keep playing more. I'm excited to play more tonight. So
sounds like we're gonna have to do a GPGC custom game.
Yeah, 100%. That'll be one of those, because I was even talking to Adam yesterday. Like, he's like, I'm probably gonna pick it up on Steam, and I'm thinking, I'm like, you know what? To be quite honest, too, technically I got it for free, so I would like to support them because I'm enjoying this game a lot. Like, I almost bought just $5 worth of coins or whatever, just to be like, here, like, I'm enjoying this game. This is awesome. I like this initiative that you're doing with how you're releasing this game. Here's $5 to, like, just towards it, since I didn't pay anything for it, technically. But
yeah, just a little support.
Right, exactly. So I may eventually just buy it on PC, too, because I really would like to play everything on PC to an extent, outside of console exclusives and whatnot. But, Mike, setting the button mash for the week here, kind of run through our quick hit news stories before we head into the big news for the week. So, kicking it off here, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers finally will be able to begin streaming select titles to their smartphone and tablets through Project xCloud starting on September 15th at no additional cost. And we already knew that it was coming. We knew it was coming bundled with Game Pass Ultimate. We knew all of that, but we finally have a hard release date, which is great. And I actually am ordering today. I meant to order it yesterday. Totally forgot about it until like 20 minutes ago. And I was like, shit, I didn't order it. But I want to get the clip for like, that you can clip your phone to your controller and actually like start playing it like that. Because you have to use a controller to do it, at least right now, as far as I know. But I'm excited to jump in and try xCloud out, especially once they integrate all of Game Pass and everything like that. So it'll be really cool. But
yeah, I would like that too, because from when I've tried to play it, when I had my Samsung rep, who used to be the Microsoft rep at Best Buy, probably for you, Rich, he had xCloud beta, and I got to try it on his, and it's just like not convenient to like prop up your phone and try to play it. So I'm excited for that too.
Exactly. Yeah, that's always been the hardest thing. Call of Duty 2020 and other upcoming quote-unquote premium titles from Activision will have a quote tight integration with Call of Duty Warzone, according to Activision's president Rob Kotick, which is not very shocking to anybody, but in a call with investors, Activision did reveal as well that this year's Call of Duty game from Treyarch and Raven Software is still in development, with Activision devs testing the game internally. The company says news about the next annual Call of Duty title should be revealed, quote-unquote, soon, which I'm still very shocked that we haven't heard anything about Call of Duty. We're in August, and usually it's like May, April, something like that. I remember the original Modern Warfare, like them revealing it during the NFL draft, and that was in April of that year.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So like and I remember when they revealed Blackout and stuff like that, like that was May. Like it's a very late spring, early summer thing to release. So it's kind of surprising that we haven't heard anything.
So I'm understanding this correctly. They're gonna keep Warzone, and the new game is gonna be separate from that. They're not gonna bring out a new BR. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's my understanding. It sounds like that how Warzone is attached to it's like, so when you boot up, and from what my thought process is, it's almost like how Fortnite's doing it, but Fortnite obviously has only had the one Fortnite, title or platform out yet, but where Call of Duty's had so many, but where my understanding seems like, okay, here's Call of Duty Modern Warfare, here's Warzone. It's it's a standalone. You don't need to buy that, but it'll integrate with, if you're basically installing Modern Warfare on your computer, but are locked out from everything else besides Warzone. Is my
that's the way I had it too on PC.
Yes.
Because I didn't buy it because I bought it on Xbox.
Right, exactly. And same here. I've yet to buy it on any platform. I just have Warzone. So, like through the Blizzard app, it's the same thing. So my guess is going to be they'll eventually just sever that from, like, when you look in your Blizzard app or whatever you have, and especially too if it's on console, I'm sure it will transfer that you'll be able to just access Warzone in either title, like you're able to play Blackout right now still in, Black Ops, whatever it was, 3 or 4, I can't remember, but it could be something like that where it's like, okay, people on console, whatever game you throw in, you'll be able to access it through there. It's all pulling from the same data files. It's just kind of, maybe Warzone will be the more focal point in terms of the application, and then matchmaking campaign of whatever game you're wanting to play will be kind of attached to that. That whenever you put your disc in, whenever you have the, digital download, license to it, it'll activate it. So I think that's what they should have done with Blackout, to be honest. I don't think it's a feasible thing to try to have a developer make a new battle royale every single year. I think they should have done that with Blackout, where like that's just going to be the BR mode, and when the new like games come out or whatever, you can make little tweaks to Blackout or Warzone in this case to kind of match it, like release a new map, release new guns that match the new game. Yeah. But by and large, you should be keeping the same platform for the same like engine and everything for probably like 5 years, because like that's a lot of stress on a dev company, and people don't want to like BR, while it's still extremely popular and I think it's going to stay that way, I do think that there is a little bit of tiring from the gaming community for general people. Like, I'm not so super pumped to just get a new Call of Duty to play a new battle royale. I'm pumped for the campaign of like, because it's going to be the Cold War Call of Duty. It's the worst kept secret in gaming. So I'm excited for that, and hopefully Halo has a BR, which it's weird. I don't think they're gonna, but maybe down the road they will. But we'll see. I would be shocked too, and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit in a little bit. But I agree that I think it's inevitable. Maybe not at launch, but I think it's inevitable. Take-Two Interactive CEO Strauss Zelnick defended the price point for NBA 2K21 and said that the price hike reflects, quote, the quality of the experience, unquote, in a new interview when speaking on the price hikes during a Take-Two Quarter 1 earnings call. Halo, the Master Chief Collection, is getting a plethora of updates coming later this year, including cross-play between Xbox One and PC, as well as a custom game browser, PC file sharing, per-game graphics and audio options, mouse and keyboard support for Xbox One, and more, which is pretty crazy. I'm curious to see how that plays out, like, with the mouse and keyboard support on Xbox One, like, how different that is.
Tried it on Smite. It's weird, because on Smite, I was used to playing on a 144 hertz monitor with higher frame rate, and it is weird, like, going to the lower frame rate and everything, but all these updates that they're releasing for MCC is kind of like how the game should have come, but it is what it is. We'll take it now.
Yeah, hey, better late than never, I guess, at this point, so I'm cool with it. Microsoft has announced that Battletoads, the remake coming from Rare, and I believe, who's the other developer behind that? Dun, 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 dun.
This is where you need an intern.
Yeah, I know, right? The Lala Studios.
Okay.
I don't remember. I thought it was a different studio than that, but I know Rare was, owning that development for the most part. But
I'm sure that studio is like I'm sure it has some pedigree to it, like with former devs or whatever, that they would team up with them.
Yeah, but Microsoft has announced that Battletoads will be available on Xbox Game Pass or to purchase on Xbox One and PC, including Steam, on August 20th, 2020. So that's coming from Rare and the Lala Studios. Bulletstorm developers, speaking of different developers, People Can Fly has announced that it is working on a next-gen action-adventure game led by Just Cause 3 director Roland Lesterlin. The game is currently untitled, but it will be a AAA, quote, highly ambitious, groundbreaking action-adventure title, unquote, set to release on next-gen consoles, presumably Xbox Series X and PS5, as well as streaming platforms and PC. CD Projekt Red has made it clear that it has no plans for a Cyberpunk 2077 beta after scam emails appeared to offer recipients the chance to join one. They tweeted from their account, quote, "If you recently received an email claiming to be granted your beta access to Cyberpunk 2077, it's not from us. Unfortunately, there have been more of these being sent out over the past weeks. When we contact you via email, it'll always come from @cdprojektred.com address." So, and then to round up Button Mash here, coming to Xbox Game Pass on August 6th. This is console only. Darksiders Genesis and Man of Medan, the Dark Pictures anthology from the creator of Until Dawn. So, definitely one to check out. It was a little lackluster in my opinion, but that's also me comparing it to Until Dawn, which, Mike and I are both huge fans of. So it's hard to it's apples and oranges to an extent, but definitely keep your eye on the Dark Pictures anthology. The new one coming out later this year, Little Hope, looks really good. So, also coming to console and PC as well, It Lurks Below, Trail Markers, Undermine, Xenocrisis, and Final Fantasy VII HD. But Final Fantasy VII HD will be coming on the 13th instead of the 6th. The rest of them coming on the 6th. But leaving Game Pass on August 14th, Devil May Cry 5 on console, Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is on both PC and console, Space Hulk Tactics, mark that down, 22. Space Hulk Tactics on PC, Where the Water Tastes Like Wine on PC, and Yoku's Island Express on both console and PC. So, Mike, before we head into the main news topics and our conversations for the week, anything stick out to you that we haven't really discussed yet on Button Mash here?
Necessarily. I know we usually take it as we will talk about the news usually when we're rounding up, but I feel like all the input I wanted to put in, I did just as we went through it, just because sometimes in this business, when you're doing something, you have something pop into your head, and while you don't want to interrupt the entire show, you do want to share it, because by the time it's over, you have forgotten to put that input in, and then the show's over, and then you're like, damn it, I forgot to add this. So no, I think it's all pretty straightforward stuff, and just really excited. There's some big things happening for Xbox, and I'm just interested to see, where it goes from here.
No, definitely. It's going to be a very fun year, I think, rounding out the year at least. But, Mike, let's head into the news for this week. So, starting out here with an opinion piece that I thought was really good to start our conversation out with this topic. Why Spider-Man's Sony Avengers exclusivity is bad for PlayStation players too. This comes from Paul Tossi over on Forbes. As always, link in the description to all these articles. Make sure you go over there, give Paul a click, give all of our authors a click. You could probably hear the collective groan from space as Sony announced yesterday that Spider-Man would be an exclusive PlayStation character in the upcoming Crystal Dynamics Avengers game, part of a marketing deal struck with Square Enix. The concept of platform exclusivity content seems incredibly dated in late 2020, like a game proudly announcing their vast selection of loot boxes. And while yes, some people remarked that Sony, with its partial ownership of over Spider-Man's rights and its exclusive game series, would of course have Spider-Man to itself, we have seen the hero appear in other cross-platform games, from Marvel's Capcom to Ultimate Alliance. Nothing about locking away Marvel's most popular hero to one console was quote-unquote mandatory for Avengers. Here's the thing. We've already seen this play out in a loot-based ongoing live game. It was bad then, and it's still bad now. And there's a reason Bungie fled from the concept as soon as they were able with Destiny, and it's really dumb to see Avengers fall into the same trap in the same genre. The problem with exclusives is that they not only hurt the obvious suspects, the platforms that they are going to are not getting X or Y exclusive, which in this case is Xbox and PC players, but they even hurt the platforms that are supposed to benefit from them. In Destiny's case, that played out in a few ways. A PlayStation exclusive Strike could never be chosen as the ultra-hard weekly Nightfall rotator. A PlayStation exclusive Crucible map could never be chosen as the dedicated Trials map. All PlayStation exclusive weapons could never be sold by Xur, the exotic vendor, which I play a little Destiny, not very familiar with some of these names, so forgive me if I butcher them. All of these things affected PlayStation players too, and made the game just a little bit worse for everyone. With Avengers, it's easy to see how this could play out in similar fashion. While the main storyline of Avengers seems to play around 6 launch heroes, Black Widow, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, and Ms. Marvel, the entire point of the game is that it will be an ongoing story that unfolds in time. It's easy to see how a character like Spider-Man, a prominent Avenger in both the MCU and the comics, could have been integrated into a major storyline at some point in the future as the game expands. But the fact that he's exclusive to PlayStation essentially ensures that he cannot be a major player in the story, regulated to some sort of introductory side mission, and that's it, or as a tag-along to other missions without a major active role. In short, his exclusivity to PlayStation limits what he can do there, and he is likely to be less prominently featured than he would be if he was a character that Xbox and PC were also getting. So we've talked about exclusivity before, and we've been pretty clear that, exclusivity in general is a pretty antiquated practice in 2020, especially with how connected games are across various platforms now with cross-play, cross-progression, all that jazz. But when it comes to content, Mike, do you think walling off such, integral pieces of the game, such as, playable characters, especially when we're talking Spider-Man. Spider-Man's the granddaddy of them all when it comes to Marvel. He's the most popular character. He's the most, remembered. He's the most integral piece in that Marvel narrative, whether, people like to admit it or not, given, the original stable of MCU's Avengers. So it's still, Spider-Man is massively huge across all of pop culture. Will that actually have a negative backlash to the game's release, or will those who are already going to play it on PC or Xbox just say, oh well, and kind of move on?
I think the sentiment taken in the opinion piece that everybody is going to suffer greatly from this is true, because the PlayStation, the development studio isn't going to make a whole new story for PlayStation so Spider-Man can have a bigger part in it. Mm-hmm. So, cool, Spider-Man's going to be involved in the PlayStation in some way, but there's going to be huge Spidey fans that are going to be disappointed that he's not a bigger part of the game and in its entirety, right? Mm-hmm. And I think with Xbox and PC, I'm not going to buy a PlayStation specifically to play as Spidey, when he's not going to be a huge part of it, because he's not going to be able to be a big part of it. So I think that sentiment's dynamite. I think that's the only way to look at it. And it is just going to be a net negative for the game and gamers' experience of the game in general, because you're just robbing an essential part of the MCU universe from everybody. And like you said, even though recently the Avengers have been primarily, maybe you would consider Spider-Man to kind of be an afterthought. Mm-hmm. Not that Tom Holland hasn't done a great job as Spider-Man acting in general.
Yeah.
But I feel like with the stars that they had for the Avengers movies, he was it's like, how many big shots are you going to put on one screen at a time? Mm-hmm. I feel like that's kind of the fate that Spider-Man had in the most recent iterations of the movies. Yeah. And, Chris Evans did a great job as Captain America, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. did a great job. So, yeah, those characters have gained popularity, but over the years, Spider-Man's been the guy. Yeah. And I think, MCU fans as a collective and gamers are all going to be upset that this decision was made. And then I saw, a lot of opinions that's like, well, Sony owns the rights to this, Sony owns the rights to that, it's their right to do it. Sure, it's their right to do it, but you just look like a jerk off doing it type thing. So I'm not a big fan of this, and I think, Spider-Man's just not going to have as big of a role as he should or could, or
Yeah.
And it's going to be a shame for everybody involved.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I get console exclusives. I get exclusive franchises. I want everybody to play, and that was always the thing that kept me coming back to Xbox. Even when I was very pissed off at Xbox earlier in this console generation from a security end, from just an offering end, anything, and I primarily played on Xbox. Though I still loved Xbox, but Halo was the one thing that always brought me back to Xbox, because nothing else gave me Halo, and Halo was so unique that it's like, I still want to play Halo. I still love playing those original Bungie games. I'll take 4 and 5 for what they were, and, I love ODST. Like, I still wanted to play that, and there was nowhere else I can play that. Now, granted, it's on PC and everything like that, but, I still get console exclusives in terms of having, okay, you can only play these franchises here. There has to be a reason to buy these consoles. Like, you have to have some kind of, like, oh, you could only play it here. Cool. I get that. But we're talking about a title here that, one, is built around squad-based play. It's built around playing this in, not only playing as, one of the biggest pop culture ensembles and characters to, in the history of entertainment, really. And I'm talking, like, books, music, everything, comic books, everything, video games. Like, we're talking the Avengers, that sect is the highest. I mean, especially now, Endgame's the highest grossing film of all time. So it's like, you gotta think, like, okay, yes, Spider-Man, while in Marvel Studios, has been more of a secondary character because of how locked up he is with Sony's licensing and Sony having the rights to, I think, since like 1999 to Spider-Man films and things like that. Totally get it.
Thanks for Tobey Maguire, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's weird, like, they have to make a new Spider-Man movie every, like, 5 years and 9 months or something like that, or the rights revert back to Marvel Studio or something. It's really weird. So I get it, and I understand, console exclusives in terms of games and things like that, but we're talking about a game that is being built as a platform. It's being built like a Destiny. It's being built like a Fortnite. It's being built like all these things that's like, cool, we're working on cross-progression because you're going to play this on Xbox One, you're eventually going, or PlayStation 4 when it launches next month, in literally, I think, a month from today. Then, whenever, you upgrade to your new consoles, you're going to be able to play it there. We'll have a PS5 and Xbox One version, but you'll be able to take your progress forward. That's totally fine. And then, them even saying, we're going to support cross-play at some point. So, okay, well, what's that mean for when you look at whenever Spider-Man eventually comes in 2021 or whatever? What's that look like for Xbox? Like, is that like with Rocket League whenever they do, if I'm playing on PlayStation and I'm playing somebody who's playing on Nintendo Switch and they have the Metroid skin or the Mario skin, I don't see that. And
like it's just like a blank skin. Yeah,
it's just like, a generic skin or whatever, or, and I don't think they've changed that. I know that that's how it was at one point, but like, is it something like that? Like, it's just paywalling off, in a way, I guess, paywalling, but like, blocking off an integral piece of a game, to me, is just asinine. It's one thing if it's like, oh, you
free on PlayStation, $10 on Xbox, or,
right, or something, like, even if it's like, cool, you get Spider-Man's coming to everywhere, but if you play on PlayStation, you're a PlayStation Plus member, you're getting this free skin for him, or you're getting this free, like, something like that isn't gameplay breaking, isn't taking away the actual experience of the game. Because then it's like, okay, well, now I'm getting a lesser version of the game anywhere else but PlayStation. And it's like,
right.
I get that. I get people wanting to draw them in. And granted, this game has not been getting, absolutely praised during its its beta runs right now. Like, the feedback and impressions haven't been great, and a lot of fears people have had seem to be coming true, but it is a platform game. It is, obviously everything going on in the world, it's already been delayed because of that. Like, I'm sure, this game will find its footing, and Marvel's going to throw money at it because they want this to be the platform, and, the basis of the game looks fun, and it's whenever we see something like Spider-Man, so it's like, okay, you're playing Halo, and it's like, yeah, Master Chief's only available on if you're playing on Xbox One or Xbox Series X. If you're playing on Xbox One, you can't get it. If you're playing on PC, you can't play as him. Like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, oh, you got to play as
who benefits from that?
No, and that's the thing. Players don't benefit because this is a game that's once again built around. Like, I get it because and over on Kind of Funny on PlayStation, PS I Love You XOXO, their PlayStation podcast, I was listening to it, and their kind of main topic for the week, talking about this whole, thing coming out of it, kind of spawned it, but is PlayStation anti-consumer. And I sometimes take the thought of, well, no, they're just being, pro-business at times. Like,
sure,
is that the same thing? But, but I think we're seeing this more because of how consumer-friendly Xbox has been. And maybe that's high, like, us seeing how high that is, how it's reflecting on PlayStation. Maybe some of the things they're doing, we're casting a bigger shadow than it is. But at the same time, though, this approach is like, one thing I remember is, I can't remember which Soul Calibur game it was, but the one that it was during the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era, where it came out, it must have been 2 or 3, came out, and each game had their own version that had, like, a unique character for each system. Like, Xbox had Spawn, PlayStation had, I think, a Tekken character or something like that, and Nintendo had Link. Like, it reminds me of that, but in this case, remove all of those in... Well, on GameCube, you get Link, and nobody else gets him on anything else. And it's like, I get it, he's a Nintendo IP, and that's a little, You get what I'm saying, though. It's it's just antiquated. It's such an antiquated approach to accessibility and to giving what this game is. It's very, to me, it still reminds me of very early 2010s, like, Call of Duty, microtransaction, like, it's just,
I'll be honest too, like they as in Sony should know better that, like, for the most part, like, the comic book community, and in this case the MCU community, like, they're pretty harsh with, like, I mean, cancel culture is kind of at a high right now, but they're, like, super harsh with this kind of thing when you're just blatantly going against the spirit of everything that it's for. And when you have a game like the Avengers that's so important to a universe like this, there's going to be some diehards that are going to be really upset with this, and there's a large following for those diehards, and it is very interesting because, like you said, it feels somewhat like just a business decision, but how bad could it backfire? And I think it could be a big deal.
I'm worried that this game, now granted, it has its gameplay issues and whatnot. I think eventually because it isn't Insomniac Spider-Man either. It's not the PlayStation exclusive, franchise that is going on. It's a different Spider-Man. It's their own unique take on it. So if it was Insomniac Spider-Man, totally, I can understand why they wouldn't put that on there. It makes, then you kind of get into, some weeds and crossed wires and whatnot. Okay, like, I get it.
And I'm not a contract lawyer, so I have no clue, like, what the legality, would be with that type of thing.
Right. So it's just, when it's a fully owned thing, and we've seen Spider-Man on Nintendo with Ultimate Alliance that came out, or the third Ultimate Alliance, that came out last year, and on top of that, also seeing, Marvel vs. Capcom games across a multitude of platforms. It's like, come on now, this is just, but hey, that's PlayStation wanting to make a business move, and, like, it's hard to really knock them because they're a business, they're trying to make money, but it's like, it's almost like a read the room type of thing. Like, try something a little less egregious, I guess.
Yeah, this was something that when I read the news at first, like, right off the hip, I was like shocked. I was like, what the hell are they doing? And then it was like something that, like, once it sank in for literally 20 seconds, I was like, it makes sense, but it's just so bizarre that they would do this.
When the rumor was running around this weekend about it, I was like, I could see it 100%, but they can't be that
tone deaf.
Yeah, like, and that's what it feels like. It just feels like a tone deaf, like, I don't know. I think eventually we will see Spider-Man on multiple platforms. I think it'll eventually move to, hey, he's on PC and Xbox, or at least on PC. I think we'll eventually see that happen, but in maybe a year, and maybe something like that, I think if anything, it should be timed. Like, I could see that it still would piss me off, but it would be like, okay, for the first 3 months, you can play as Spider-Man on PlayStation. That's the only place. After that, everybody gets them. And granted, it's all free. You don't have to pay for Spider-Man. It's like, it's a free update. So all their characters that they're adding are free with evolving. There's no season pass, anything like that. You'll be able to, I'm sure, buy actual cosmetics in the game if you want and things like that. But outside of that, it's free. So, like, the only thing is, like, okay, he's just trapped on one console, which sucks. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out long term. Like I said,
I'd like to hear from Peter Parker himself, if he was a real person, to see how he feels about it.
Right, exactly. I feel like he'd be more consumer friendly than, pro business, I guess. But I don't know. We'll see. Mike, let's move on to the next one here. And this one is a big one, too. I almost led with this, but the Spider-Man one was a little newer than this one. But now I think we're going to have a good conversation about this one. Halo Infinite multiplayer is free to play, 343 confirms. This comes from Adam Bankhurst over on IGN, as always, link in the description. Following a leak, 343 Industries has confirmed that Halo Infinite's multiplayer will be free to play and will support 120 frames per second on Xbox Series X. Halo's Twitter account shared the news saying, quote, Halo is for everyone. We can confirm that Halo Infinite multiplayer will be free to play and will support 120 frames on Xbox Series X. More details will be shared later. Earlier today, which I can't remember when this was going on, but earlier, Smith's Toys, which I'm not very familiar with, but supposedly they're the ones who leaked this, quote-unquote leaked this or whatever. They put out the ad for it earlier than expected. Smith's Toys leaked the news in its listing for the Xbox Series X, highlighting the free-to-play news, 120 frames per second, and, quote, greatly reduced load times. While we have yet to learn much about Halo Infinite's multiplayer, we did learn more about its campaign at the Xbox Game Showcase, where 343 confirmed it will be running at a locked 60 frames. Halo Infinite will also be more of a platform than a standalone entry, and this move to free-to-play only reinforces that this is what Halo will look like for the foreseeable future. 343 Industries' confirmation of Halo Infinite's free-to-play future follows its open discussion on the community's mixed response on the latest Halo's graphics and visual style, a possible multiplayer beta, and microtransactions. Halo Infinite will be released alongside the Xbox Series X in holiday 2020, but will also be available on PC and Xbox One. So, Mike, if Infinite didn't have a lot riding on it before, it sure as hell does now. One of the biggest things that Halo has struggled with in terms of, innovation is the fact that it lacked things to bring in players, and, its player base really suffered from that and became smaller. And due to that standing, where the standing of the franchise is, but now that this barrier to access the multiplayer component is at an all-time low, do you see this kind of, move having the ability to spark a wildfire when, breathing new life into this franchise and the player attachment, the player count? Like, do you feel this could be that move that kind of really gives Halo the shot in the arm to, like, okay, everybody has a chance to play it. Let's give them a reason why that they should invest their time into this platform long term.
Yeah, I think whenever they were deciding to make this move for the multiplayer being free, I think that they kind of watched what Valve did with Counter-Strike, and they were definitely paying attention and seeing, like, okay, Counter-Strike's numbers are starting to dwindle post-skin situation. What's next for Counter-Strike? Like, this is a proud franchise. It's been alive forever, has a ton of players. Like, what are they going to do next? And then, Counter-Strike goes to free-to-play. And with free-to-play, there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of positives. Things like, allowing people to play the game for free is a big deal. Because you're going to get a bigger player base. And with one thing with Halo, like you said in the top of this question, is the player base has been dwindling, and now it's so small. It's like, it's really sad, because it was once a game that, getting on Halo 3 on a Friday or Saturday night on the East Coast, it would be nothing to see 1 million concurrent players. Like, and that's not an exaggeration. That's just the way it was. There's tons of pictures online of that. And like, that's a lot of players. And Counter-Strike has experienced some of those swollen numbers recently because of their free-to-play move. So I think, kind of taking a page out of their playbook, Microsoft said, hey, let's give this a whirl. there's so many pros that come with like it being free to play. The biggest thing, like I said, is player base, and also allowing people who may be worried about a $60 entry fee, that would, disparage them from playing. But now that you kind of have given them a way to play for free, I could see a lot of people giving it a shot. And when that happens, they're going to tell their other friends, like, hey, Halo's free, you should check it out. This one's actually really good. And it could cause a big swell. And that's great for the pro scene, too, because what they're going to wind up doing is doing microtransactions for skins to make up some of the money once the pro league really takes off, which is awesome for the pro players, too, because it's going to increase their salaries, which is great. I think the only cons that I really that comes to mind when you're talking about a free-to-play game is the amount of cheaters that it might allow into the game, because there is no barrier to access. Counter-Strike saw an uptick in that. They're struggling to keep up with it. I think that's going to be a problem that
look at Warzone too. Warzone's been horrible with that.
And I think Microsoft's going to have to pay the piper when it comes time for cheaters, because Xbox, it's been relatively easy to keep cheaters out because it's kind of a hard process to cheat on Xbox. You have to do a lot of different things, and
it's not as accessible like a PC where you can have that hands-on modular approach where Xbox and a home console is very non-modular. You have to break warranties, you have to do all these things just to, in most cases, actually, hard mod your actual Xbox, not soft mod it. You got to actually get in there and do things to it.
Exactly. And, the pro scene is going to struggle a little bit with that, because there's going to be new talent that comes out of nowhere could be having aimbot or whatever walls wouldn't be so much of a help in Halo. It would be, but aimbot would be more of an aid, I would think, that we would see. And that's something that I'm sure Microsoft is kind of planning on how they're going to combat that with the pro scene, because integrity with the game is a very important part of everything. And up until this point, you haven't really had to worry so much about, the integrity, because it's been on Xbox. It's really hard to hard mod that, and it's more of a pain than it's worth because there hasn't been a lot of money in the game. But with this, we could see a huge uptick in money spent, and it'll be interesting to see. And I mean, I think it's a good move, because you just need people to come play your game, man. Like, you've been working on for 5 years. People have lost a lot of faith in you. They don't really believe in your abilities to make a game. So what better way to kind of give people a shot, or have people give you a chance, than to make it free?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's going to be, I'm curious to see how this nets out when it comes to, how they're going to tackle this with Game Pass, and how, how it's all going to work when it comes to supporting, and we're going to talk about it next with Xbox Live and what's going on with that. But, how this is going to really, more so on, like you're saying, the cheating end and the sustainability end, and just really that first kickoff is where I kind of it has to have a really good start to me to for the long term to really kind of carry it, because they'll probably have, thanks alone to, Xbox Game Pass being so easy to get into in general, with a low, cost of entry and things like that, because most people can get in for their first 3 months for $1 or something like that, like crazy. We're going to see a lot of that during the launch of the Series X. We're going to see a lot of those numbers be bolstered, but, how long can that, where's it go after that in terms of financing this game to keep cheaters out, to keep, and granted, Halo is the flagship title, it's the flagship franchise for Xbox. They're going to toss everything they can at that, all that money that they have. But, I just get worried about the longevity of it, where I don't want to see it. I think this is going to help it, because anybody then could get in. And I think a lot of multiplayer games like this, where, the Fortnite method of, hey, this portion is free to play, but you can get in, you can play, you can have the full experience, whatever, there's no gatekeeping, anything, but we're going to offer you everything under the sun to pay for, in terms of, you want, an XP boost, you want a cosmetic skin. Yeah, which is all cool, because that doesn't affect, the actual
It's not pay to win.
No, it's not pay to win. It's just pay to look cool, or pay to, get through all the objectives or whatever. But, at the end of the day, the actual gameplay, isn't going to change. So I'm very positive on this. I mean, this is a good thing. More people are able to play Halo, and that's kind of like what I was talking about before, where the only reason why I stuck to Xbox, during that period where I was very down on them was I still like playing Halo. I still like having access to Halo. And this is the only way I can get that, so I'm going to hang on to this. I'm going to, play... I'm going to use my Xbox as my Halo machine for right now while I'm playing everything else into there, but with what Xbox has been doing over the past handful of years, like, they've started redeeming themselves and doing a lot of pro-consumer things that have brought me and a lot of people back in. And, obviously, we love Xbox. We're doing a show about it, but this is one of those things that I'm curious if this was a 343 decision, or if this was a Microsoft decision, or if this was, hey, we both were kind of thinking that, let's do it. I'm curious to see I'm just curious to see how this all pans out. Because it could either be amazing, and Halo is, once again, the next big thing, and it's in everybody's home again, everybody's playing it, or at least it has this chance to be the, it's in that stable of, like, top 5 games on Twitch, or something like that, because of its access. Or it could end up being a Hyperscape, or it could end up, and granted, Hyperscape only released not that long ago, so it's hard to say that, but it kind of released and nobody talks about it, or at least I haven't talked about it, or I haven't seen people talk about it, but, Hyperscape, what's the other one? There's how many Battle Royales anymore? Like, PUBG, a lot of people don't necessarily, like, PUBG isn't in the mindset of people 24/7 anymore, like, and granted, that's not free to play, but you get what I mean. It's like, I hope this isn't just a flash in the pan, and that this carries on, and luckily it seems like 343, they've been through the ringer before with having a pro scene. They have the, Halo has had this, exuberant, unreal level of success for so long that it's like, in terms of, previously where people know what this franchise is, they know the history behind it, they know the importance of this. Okay, well, let's, hopefully people know, like, okay, I know Halo, I haven't played a Halo in so long. Oh, it's free, cool, I want to jump in and play it. And they get hooked. So, and it all comes down to gameplay, too. Like, I'm curious if that gameplay is going to resonate with people. Whether, it seems to be that mix of classic Halo, but also having advanced movement and things like that, to a degree. So, I don't know, man. It'll be interesting.
I think Halo kind of, 343, Microsoft, they kind of see the amateurs of the Call of Duty scene complaining about lack of support, lack of prize pool money. All CDL cares about is the pros, which, yeah, it's probably true. I'm curious to see that if the free game combined with microtransactions to help fund prize pools could potentially spawn a more supportive amateur scene, provide more money for amateurs, and give amateurs a little bit more of a chance to grow. Because if that's the case, you could see a lot of players coming over to play the competitive version, which I know esports, it's arguable that, like, obviously Call of Duty has a very mass appeal to casual players, and that's their breadwinner. But the popularity of the COD World League you can't ignore it, or the CWL, you can't ignore that. Well, I guess it now is the CDL, because now they have, like, the teams in different cities and everything, and I think it's just interesting to see, like, I think it'll be interesting to see how many amateur COD players want to hop over and play Halo, because maybe there'll be more money for amateurs, which will make it more worth their time. It won't just be a passion thing. It'll be like, I actually have an opportunity to make a little money, because as of forever, if you've been an amateur Halo player and you weren't ever going to break into the top ranks, it's 100% just passion. Like, you just love the game and you love competing. It hasn't been worth it for money, Yeah.
No, definitely. So, man, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be...
It's a great year. Like, yeah. as bad as the year has been for a lot of different reasons, it's going to be an interesting one for gaming.
Yeah, this has always had, it's funny, it's always had the 2020 at first, before, all of this, like, when we were going into 2020 at the end of last year, like, people were like, this could be the best year in gaming. Like, 2017 was looked at that, and then 2018 came along, 2017, you had, Breath of the Wild, you had Mario Odyssey, you had Horizon Zero Dawn, you had all these big tentpole franchises coming to major platforms and whatnot. A lot of different things that were coming out at that point. Then 2018 came along and you had God of War, you had Red Dead, you had Celeste, you had Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you had Spider-Man, you had all these huge titles that came out, and then 2019 was kind of like good, but kind of a wet fart. So like 2020 was always billed as, oh fuck, we're getting a ton of shit. We're getting Final Fantasy VII Remake, we're getting Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, we're getting Halo Infinite, we're getting new consoles, we're getting all this stuff, potentially the next Breath of the Wild, which obviously isn't happening anymore, I'm sure, at least not this year, but it's crazy, man. This is going to be a good year for gaming still. You know, we've had a lot of good stuff, but it still has the potential to move the needle, I think. So, Mike, let's move on to our last news story for this week. Microsoft removes mention of Xbox Live from its service agreement. This comes from Austin Wood over on Games Radar, as always, link in the description. In another move suggesting an impending overhaul of Xbox multiplayer, Microsoft is removing direct references to Xbox Live from its service agreements and replacing them with, quote, Xbox Online Services. As Twitter sleuth Wario64 pointed out, the change in verbiage was highlighted in a new list of updates to the service agreement. The shift from Xbox Live to Xbox Online Services was part of a broader flattening of terms, with Xbox consoles replacing specific mentions of Xbox 360 and Xbox One. However, both Xbox Live and Xbox Live Gold are still mentioned under, quote, covered services in the updated service agreement, just not under the Xbox header itself. The console mentions were presumably changed to simplify and unify Microsoft's messaging ahead of the release of the Xbox Series X, which will support 4 generations of games through digital backwards compatibility. It's possible that the substitution of Xbox Live was just as benign, but it comes across as more pointed given the timing. Just over 2 weeks ago, Microsoft removed 12-month subscriptions from Xbox Live Gold, or for Xbox Live from the store. This led many to believe that major changes would come to Xbox Live Gold by the end of the year, or within the 6-month time frame of the next largest subscription card. And last week, the company confirmed that the multiplayer for Halo Infinite, the tentpole launch title for the Xbox Series X, will be free to play. Together, all this suggests that Xbox multiplayer, or Xbox Online Services, you might say, will be reshaped for the next generation. So, you know, Fix and I kind of talked about this a little bit. You and I, Mike, talked about the 12-month subscriptions going away or whatever, not being able to buy them. You know, I talked a little bit, a tiny bit about it over the past couple of weeks, but now there's a bit more solidified info that it looks as though Xbox Live is going to be no more, continuing to lean into that PC gaming approach of accessibility and choices and not being tied to one thing and just booting it up and it works, quote Todd Howard, where it just, you don't have to worry about it. You're already paying for online in terms of your, internet. Cool. You just have access. Start playing the game online. But, the thing always was, back in the day, it was, technology-wise, we need the money to keep up these servers and, for consoles, it's much harder and yada yada. But, how do you think this will affect Game Pass enrollment? Especially when we're talking about Game Pass Ultimate, which originally included Xbox Live, and, does the xCloud support substitution justify the price of Ultimate in comparison with potentially Xbox Live being ditched?
This is a topic that is one that, had you told me pre-2020 we would even be discussing, I would have told you you're crazy, because I never would have thought that this day would come.
Yeah.
However, I do think it makes a lot of sense. I think this is Microsoft's way at trying to challenge Sony without actually taking them head on. Meaning, like, the console war, I think Microsoft's kind of waving the white flag.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can really argue that point with everything they're doing with Game Pass and PC and all that. I think they're just straight up surrendering the console war, which I think they're happy to do and they're fine with doing. I think what they're doing is they're going to challenge Sony just overall, just what can you offer your gamers that would make them want to play your games versus our games? They can have our games on PC. It's part of Game Pass. You can play it on your Xbox Series X if you want one. If you're a PC gamer and you haven't had Xbox since Xbox Original, we don't care. You can play our stuff. If you are a longtime fan like me, still have Ninja Gaiden Black on a disc because you speedrun it like me. Mm-hmm. It's going to work on your Xbox Series X. And guess what? Your speedrunning times are going to get even better because there's no loading times anymore. Mm-hmm. So, I think that Microsoft is kind of getting away from straight up challenging Sony, and I think they're kind of, taking them on in a different approach, and I'm really excited for it and really happy for it, because I think, when we were coming in and we first started this show over a year ago now at this point, the big discussion was like, how is Microsoft going to challenge Sony? Sony is unquestioned king right now in console. Now, obviously, Nintendo has their people, and Nintendo's kind of an anomaly, so we never really talk about them because they're always going to have people that buy their stuff, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But, it just seems like Microsoft isn't going to challenge them with first party or like franchise games besides like Halo and Gears and that, but it doesn't feel like they're going to challenge them straight up for console sales. They're just challenging them straight up for like, are people going to actually play your games? And I think that's an interesting way to take on Sony. And that's kind of how I see it. As far as what it's going to do for enrollment, I think unquestionably it has to increase the enrollment. Yeah, it sucks that they're getting rid of Xbox Live, so it feels like some value might be lost for potential buyers. But if the xCloud services are good and they improve them more than we've played thus far with the lagginess and everything, I don't see why people wouldn't be happy to substitute that for Xbox Live. I think it's interesting, and I think it'll be cool.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I definitely think the substitution for xCloud being in there, having access to your games library, or at least, starting out, won't be as diverse. There'll only be a handful of titles on there. But having eventually access to all of these titles, full Game Pass library, things like that, in your Ultimate subscription, I think is much more, like, the value to me is much higher there. Like, to me, it's easily, like, cool. I'd much rather pay $15 for Xbox Game Pass PC, and xCloud than Xbox Game Pass PC, and Xbox Live. And like I was kind of saying, we're at the point now that, like, playing games online should never cost money to a consumer. Like, the ability to. Now, I get some things like I've talked about before, like World of Warcraft and things like that, where it's like over the top, like a subscription fee. You're able to basically get in without paying. It's more of a platform than anything, but even then, it's like, cool, look at how many other online MMOs are out there that you're able to get in there and play at with next to nothing or no price or whatever. For $15 you gotta pay, like, or whatever it is, $100 for the year to play this game. Like, come on. Like, it, and we're talking about Blizzard and stuff. We're talking about companies like Microsoft, like Blizzard, like Activision, like, Ubisoft, like Epic, like these big tech companies that could easily, and Sony too, they could easily handle all of that, the security end of servers, handle that networking to provide. Like, before, Nintendo's thing was always, I remember they always were like, oh, well, you can't, the way they take their online, especially with paying for it now, and granted, Nintendo's online is very cheap, it's next to nothing, and you get, NES and SNES games on top of that, being outside of being able to just play online, and it's very cheap. But they always took the approach of like, oh, you can't add people by their usernames or anything like that. You have to use a friend code and all this weird ways of accessing, because they were worried about the kids. They wanted to make sure it was a safe environment for whoever got on there. And even like Xbox and PlayStation to a degree, where it's like, oh, well, we want to make sure you're paying for this, so we know who's going on there. It's not just Joe Blow or whatever necessarily jumping on there. But
yeah,
it kind of defeats the purpose that, like, well, yeah, but people can still pay for it and get on there and do those things. Like, that doesn't, that takes a step out of it. That's like, oh, I have to take another step and pay for it and use a credit card and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, that could happen anywhere. That could still happen. You're not, defeating the inevitable. So it's just shocking to me that it's taken this long and this much effort to, like, get to this point where it's like, oh yeah, you don't need to pay for online. I mean, hell, and granted, Sony's infrastructure during the PS3 wasn't necessarily at the point where while it was free, they had much more security issues and things like that. Like, they were having data breaches and shutdowns.
Felt like it never worked.
Right, yeah, and there were a lot of issues with it, but they got their shit together once the technology started advancing, and then eventually they brought on PS Plus towards the end of that console's life cycle. I think it was in 2010, actually. So, like, a couple years before the PS4 came out, the past the second third of their console's life cycle, that then they started paying for that, and you saw increases in, being taken care of, and you got, games for it and things like that, just like games with gold and whatnot. But games with gold's probably going to go away. With the Xbox Live Gold going away, games with gold, really, the value anymore of those games is next to none, because we're getting, not that those games suck, but with Game Pass being...
We'll just put them on Game Pass.
Right, and those games, like, the games that are on Game Pass are already so accessible, and they're already, like, a lot of them are AAA, big budget, like, big games that you think of, where you look at games for gold, and it used to be games that were kind of filling that void that you'd see, where now Xbox would rather you get those games on Game Pass and move there, and it's just as cheap, if not cheaper, to do that, where games with gold, you're getting, granted, some good games, but, like, much smaller scale games and older games that doesn't necessarily mean, like, there are a lot of great older games that we've seen come through there, but, like, at this point they're running out of those, and it's like, okay, well, what do you give them now instead of where they don't leave Game Pass and whatnot? And so I'm really interested to see how this plays out, but I would imagine it's clear as day that when Xbox talks next, whether it's in August, this August rumored event that we're planning to see, it's not really rumored, they've already said before that they're going to have some kind of information or event every month talking about Xbox and leading up to the Series X's launch. But, if we get some other kind of statement on them, I'm sure it's soon, and I'm sure it's going to be, hey, we're going in this direction. Xbox Live Gold is gone. Xbox Live may still be there, but it's just, you just sign up for it and you have it. It's just there. Like, yeah, you get added benefits with Game Pass and whatnot, but there's no gold. You just sign up, no credit card information. Like, granted, you probably have to put your credit card information if you want to buy things from the store, so, but we won't be charging your account every month or every year or whatever to play online. It's there. It's like the silver edition of it. So, I'm excited for that, because I think that just plays so much into their approach of, hey, we're taking this like PC gaming. You have access to whatever, we just want you playing our games. Cool. You don't want to pay for online? Cool. We'll get you in with Game Pass, and it's already been included in there to begin with for the most part. Yeah, that's fine. We'll take it away. Like, we'd rather invest the money somewhere else, or see you invest the money somewhere else. We could take care of that back end. So, Mike, send the party chat for this week. As always, party chat, it's where we're going to propose one question each week at the end of the show that we want to discuss. Could be as simple as, what's your favorite story beat of a game, or what have you been playing during quarantine, or anything like that. Or it could be a little more serious, like, why does this negative stigma around gaming still exist? And after answering ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses to the question over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, or write in via email like some users do, and we'll read some of those responses the following week. Last week's question: with gaming currently at the height of its popularity and more celebrities waiting to offer their abilities to the medium, which actor or actress would you want to see lend their likeness and voice acting to a game, and which Microsoft franchise would make a good fit? And Kevin F3967 said, while he's technically already in the game, I want to finally see Dave Bautista have a prominent role in a Gears of War game, not just a multiplayer character. I do as well, considering they basically ripped Marcus Phoenix's persona and look off of Dave Bautista. So, and he's always wanted to play Marcus in the Gears of War movie and whatnot. And so I think that's a really good fit. So this week's question, Mike: which will be higher after the first 6 months of their quote-unquote life? PlayStation 5 units sold, or new Xbox Game Pass subscriptions combined with Xbox Series X units sold?
This is a pretty tricky question. I think the knee-jerk reaction you kind of want to spit out is the Xbox option with Game Pass and units sold. Then you have to think that the fact that there are probably a lot of hardcore fans that already have Game Pass.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I said new Xbox subscriptions.
Yep.
So
yeah, I think. You know what? I'll probably say I'm gonna go with the Xbox Game Pass and Xbox sales, because there are a lot of good Xbox games on the Game Pass that there might be gamers that have PC and are PlayStation gamers that are going to play Halo. And obviously it's going to be free to play, but the campaign's going to be on Game Pass. So like if they don't have Game Pass yet and they haven't played Xbox in a while, they're going to want to play the campaign. Plus MCC's on there. Like there's a lot of good value there that I think will project Xbox ahead of just straight up Sony PlayStation 5 sales. Yeah. However, the fact that it's even a debate and it's even like I'm kind of torn on it is worth noting, because that is why I think it's important that Microsoft just forgets trying to compete with Sony straight up in console sales and goes with the attack that they're going with.
Yeah. It's tough. I'm really torn because I know Sony is going to come like straight out the gate really hot. They're going to sell a ton of realistically, both consoles are going to sell through their first allotment. Like that. Like it's going to happen. More people are gaming now than ever. More people are at home more than ever now. Like there's more emphasis on gaming more than any other point in our history of society. Like in the history of the medium, for sure. That both consoles are going to come out and sell like hotcakes. I think from units sold and PlayStation's still going to outsell like pretty easily the Xbox Series X, but that's also because of Game Pass. Do I see a ton of people getting new Game Pass subscriptions? That's the bigger question. I think we're going to see that, but I think a lot of people who are already invested in Xbox already have Game Pass, who are already going to buy, like those people are going to buy the Series X right off the bat. Like the hardcore gamer, those are the people who are buying day one, whatever. But then we look at 6 months in and we see the people after we've heard some rumblings, after the dust has settled a little bit of, okay, that initial batch is through, now what? What's it look like now? What's the standings, quote unquote? Then we see more people start to hear like, oh, yeah, I bought an Xbox Series X, but like I probably could have just got Game Pass. Then you see people who are like, oh, well, I have a PC, I could just get Game Pass. Like you're going to see more and more. I'm someone who
has always gotten the new Xbox. This is the first year that I probably won't get the Xbox at release because Halo Infinite's going to be on PC. So I know that's a game that I'm going to spend a ton of time on. There's no need for me to go out and buy another console because I'm going to get to play my new game that I want on PC anyway, so I don't really need a console at that point in time.
Right.
Because the new NHL is going to be on the old console anyway. So even if I want to play hockey, it'll be on Xbox One. That's correct, right? Or is it only going to be on the new console? I can't remember which is which.
I think it's going to be on Xbox One. I don't think it's coming out this year on Series X or the new ones. Yeah. We
covered that a few weeks back. I just wanted to make sure that was straight.
Yeah, it's just coming to current gen consoles. So there is real I'm kind of with you. To be quite honest, right off the bat, if I had to choose one, I'm probably choosing a PlayStation 5. Like gut reaction, just because I have access to all of Microsoft stuff on my PC right now. And that's okay. Like that's not me being like, oh, well, PlayStation 5 better, blah blah blah. It's like the stuff I want to play on PlayStation, like in the PlayStation ecosystem, I have to play on PlayStation 5. Like Miles Morales, the like Spider-Man 1.5 that's coming out at the end of this year and presumably launching with the console. I'm going to want to play that because Spider-Man 2018 is one of my favorite games of all time. So like I'm going to want to jump into that. I'm going to want to play that. And I can only play it on PlayStation 5, where Halo Infinite is still one of my most anticipated games of this year, and for sure of this year, and probably for a long time, that, I could play that on my PC, and I could play that at a really high fidelity, I could play that at really good frame rates, I could do all of that, and it's a first-person shooter, so I want to play that on PC, but...
Yeah, because if I can play it unlocked on PC frame rate, why would I hold myself to 120 frames? I know the Xbox Series X is only going to have an HDMI 2 port, it can only handle 120 hertz, I get it, but like if I can play it unlocked on PC, that's the way I'd prefer to play it.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I'm going to go with... I think I'm going to go with the new subscriptions in Series X. I think the units sold is going to be very much so more, when we're talking just units sold, very much more PlayStation, at least in the first 6 months, but it also depends on what these price points come out at. So
let's talk about, I know this is just pertaining to the question. I know we're wrapping up the show, but let's just to kind of pry a little bit more into your opinion, because there might be people out there that want to know. Are we talking like 2-to-1 PlayStation to Xbox consoles sold? Like, what are you thinking as far as just straight up, like, how many more consoles of Sony are going to sell than Xbox?
See, I think with us not knowing the prices yet, I think that's going to be still the big thing, because I feel like Microsoft is going to be ballsy enough to come out and undercut the PS5. Like the Xbox, they will come out and they're cool with selling at a loss, where I think PlayStation is more open to saying, okay, we've fucking kicked ass this past generation so much that we just know people are going to buy our console off of that alone, period. Like,
sure.
I've been playing on the PlayStation 4 these past, 7 years. Why wouldn't I change? Yeah, I'm getting a PlayStation 5. Like, that makes sense, of course. Like, I get that. But I think when you look at Microsoft, they have the cash, they have the assets to be able to look and say, okay, well, if they come out at $5.99, we're for sure coming out at $4.99. Or if PlayStation comes out at $4.99, I think they're open to saying we'll come out at $3.99. Like, I don't think I never would have thought that, but the way that they're approaching the accessibility and everything like that, I wouldn't be shocked. Do I think that's going to completely happen at that price point? Maybe not, but like, I'm not disputing it. I'm not like throwing that argument away, because before, at some point, I always thought it wouldn't be anywhere less than $4.99, but the way that they're acting and the way they're just wanting to get people into the ecosystem, they have the cash to be able to say, and the assets to be able to say, we're cool with selling at a $50 loss or whatever it is, or a $100 loss on these consoles, just to get them out and get people in our ecosystem, and we'll make that all back through Game Pass and software sales and whatever, So I still think PlayStation is going to outsell units, and I think it could be a 2-to-1 type thing, because I don't think Xbox Series X is still going to sell well, and I think it'll sell even better if, obviously they're a lower price point, but I think with how much emphasis Game Pass is, and, Fix and I talking last week about basically Game Pass is the next-gen console. Mm-hmm. Series X is just a way to get to it, and, it's just an option you have, like a cell phone or whatever, It's just another avenue to get there. The real next-gen console is the software itself, almost. So, the platform of Game Pass. So, I think it may be a 2-to-1 type thing, but I don't think that will be a bad thing. I don't think that'll be viewed as how a 2-to-1 for PlayStation to Xbox sales were at the beginning of this generation, where there was, like, nothing. Like, there was just nothing Microsoft could offer additionally, where now they have this behemoth that is Game Pass that will make that revenue or make that value stand out so much. So, well, that's our answer. So now it's your turn. Tweet us over at GPGC Podcast or email us into the email address on our Twitter and in the description. Let us know what you think. We want to hear about it, and you may just get on the show for next week. But Mike, I think that's going to do it for episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, talk about all the nerdy video game stuff we've been talking about today, including Halo Infinite, and what we think about sales with both the Xbox One and PS5.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier. And yeah, I'm streaming. It's been a little bit slow, but once my girlfriend moves to Virginia, I'll probably be doing that a lot more often, because I'll have a lot more free time. Positives and negatives, I guess. Yeah,
definitely. But as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Traveless, on most internet platforms, including Twitter at Traveless_, that's TRAVLESS_. You can find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Traveless_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me over on Xbox Live, you could do so at just regular Traveless, that's TRAVLESS, no underscore on that. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get a podcast at. Rate us, review us, all that jazz. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. With that being said, Mike, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you so much for everyone for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors. Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.